Ja, guten Nachmittag oder guten Abend. Ich begrüße Sie sehr herzlich im Literaturhaus zu diesem Festival, zu den Tagen internationaler Literatur zum Thema Arm und Reich mit der Lesung von Kim Thúy. Kim, c'est un très grand plaisir de vous accueillir ce soir. It's such a pleasure that we have you here. Welcome, Kim Thúy. Das Thema ist Can Beauty Save the World? Kann Schönheit die Welt retten? Wir sind gespannt, jetzt mehr darüber zu hören, ob das möglich ist und wenn ja, dann wie. Tuba Ayaz wird den Abend moderieren. Ganz herzlich willkommen, Tuba Ayaz. Und Claudia Jahn wird die deutschen Passagen lesen. Noch ist sie im Publikum, dann später hier. Herzlich willkommen, Claudia Jahn. Kim Thúy ist aus Montreal für das Festival angereist. Nicht nur für das Festival, sie ist auch hier, weil sie Gastprofessorin für französische Sprache und Kultur ist an der ETH Zürich. Und mit dieser Gastprofessur arbeiten wir seit vielen Jahren immer sehr gern und sehr gut zusammen. Und aus dieser Kooperation ist auch dieses Festivalpanel entstanden. Denn dieser Titel, Can Beauty Save the World, ist eigentlich auch das Thema, das Kim Thúy an Vorlesungen mit Studierenden bespricht. Ich glaube, die erste war gestern und heute. Und als wir das gelesen hatten, dachten wir sofort, das passt zum Thema Arm und Reich so gut, weil wir haben darüber nachgedacht, was macht uns reich, was ist Reichtum, was ist Erfüllung. Und es ist ein wichtiger Aspekt auch dieses Festivals, das ja nicht nur über materielle, sondern auch über immaterielle Werte nachdenken soll. Und wir sind am zweiten Festivaltag. Ich gebe jetzt ein bisschen Kontext, was bisher geschah. Gestern war die Eröffnung mit einer Rede von Edouard Louis. Und als er Kim Thúy im Publikum sah, sagte er, wie schön, dass Kim Thúy hier ist. Ich lese sie so gern. Und die beiden haben sich dann ausgetauscht. Und Edouard Louis hat eine sehr schöne Eröffnungsrede gehalten, wo es um seinen Bruder ging. Und dieser Bruder war einmal in Frankreich ein Compagnon du Devoir, ein Companion of Duty hat er es genannt. Es ist eine Gruppe von Handwerkern in Frankreich, die in ganz Europa bedeutende historische Bauwerke restaurieren. Und ich zitiere kurz jetzt Edouard Louis. Ohne sie, diese Companions of Duty, gäbe es keine Geschichte, keine Vergangenheit, keine Kunst und keine Schönheit. Und er hat sich dabei versprochen und statt Companion of Duty zweimal Companion of Beauty gesagt. Und das fand ich sehr schön und möchte jetzt noch einmal Kim Thúy als Companion of Beauty.
Yes, I agree.
Und Tuba Ayaz ist freie Reporterin in Zürich. Sie schreibt für sehr viele Zeitungen und Zeitschriften, unter anderem auch für die WOZ, und sie ist auch regelmäßig als Moderatorin bei uns zu Gast, hat zum Beispiel mit Lukas Bärfuß ein sehr schönes Gespräch geführt oder bei den Schweizer Buchpreisen letztes Jahr. Und auch Claudia Jahn ist regelmäßig bei uns zu Gast. Sie ist freiberufliche Schauspielerin und Sprecherin und sie ist Dozentin im Fach Schauspiel an der Zürcher Hochschule der Künste seit letztem Jahr, glaube ich. Und ein ganz großer Dank an die ETH, an diese Gastprofessor, an Charlotte Meissner und Andreas Kircher, mit denen wir immer so sehr schön zusammenarbeiten können. Vielen Dank für die Unterstützung auch dieses Panels und Dank auch an das Collegium Helveticum. Und hiermit ist das Gespräch eröffnet.
Now we will switch into English. Yes, it's my very great pleasure, Kim, to have you here tonight, and very welcome also to all viewers, also the viewers via live stream. I'm truly looking forward to that conversation, and I'm also looking forward to open the conversation towards the end to the audience, so if you will have any questions, we will have time to answer them. Or yes. Kim will have time.
I was going to say, ask questions anytime.
We can do this. Yeah. So, yeah, when we look at the world, we see inequality. We see a world that is literally on fire. We see armed conflicts. And we live in trembling times. So, beauty will save the world. This sentence was written by the great Russian author Dostoevsky in the 19th century in his famous novel The Idiot. Ever since, this quote has traveled from decade to decade, and every generation has interpreted differently. And I would like to ask you, dear Kim, what does this quote inspire you nowadays in the trembling times we live in?
I think it is because of the trembling time that we need to see beauty, and it's a discipline actually to see beauty. If not, we don't stand back up probably, and we don't allow ourselves to see beauty during these very difficult times. And I would tell you that beauty has helped me to survive almost. And I give you just one example. In the refugee camp where I was in Malaysia for 4 months when I was 10 years old, we lived basically next to a forest with nothing, and every day we receive a fish from the Red Cross, but called the Red Crescent, because we were in Malaysia, and Malaysia is Muslim, so the Red Cross is called the Red Crescent. And so the Red Crescent took care of us, and there were 250,000 Vietnamese refugees arriving in Malaysia alone. I'm not talking about Thailand, the Philippines, and in other countries. So there were so many people for them to manage, right? And so they didn't have enough vans or anything to distribute for the distribution of food, and the food was simply, just a fish, and so we had that fish, one fish per family for 6 days out of 7. Only on Sunday we have a chicken, and for the whole family, and we were very happy. And nothing of the chicken was wasted. We ate it, everything, the bones and everything. And so same thing with the fish. And because it was not refrigerated vats, so the fish had to travel in the heat. And Thailand is, I would say, 35, 38 degrees usually. And in a van, I would say that it rises up to 40 and more. So when the fish arrived to us, of course, the fish was dead. But it became alive again, right? Because of all the eggs that from the flies. So when I'm sorry, this is before dinner, but you see, it gets better. So when we get the fish, you would see all the the worms coming out of the eyes, and when you open it up, also it was full of larvae. And of course, the first fish, when we saw that, we were in shock. But we were also very hungry. And so my father, and I learned this from my father, he always see beauty all the time. And so in this difficult, in these extreme circumstances, he laughed and he said, "Oh my God, we're so lucky. We were supposed to have proteins only from the fish, and now we have free proteins from the worms. This is so good." And then he clapped, and we all clapped with him because we didn't know what to do. And so I would tell you that just for that one example, this is where the only resistance we have left is beauty. And I also learned from Tim O'Brien, who wrote the book, The Things They Carried, and he's an American soldier who was in Vietnam during the war, and he came back and he was describing, the patrol when the troop was out in the jungle, checking for enemies and so on and so forth. And he said, when you walk, you try not to get out of the little path on which had been examined, and the mines are taken away. But sometimes there were mines which had not been taken out. And then another soldier would step on the mine. And when that soldier stepped on the mine, everybody knows what will happen next, right? That the body would be shattered and blood would be spilled everywhere. But he said, but your eyes, even though your brain knows this, your eyes cannot help but see the body of that soldier being pushed up midair, right? And standing like an angel as the sun is lighting this body standing before it blows up. And he said, even though you know it's horrible, your eyes see this beauty. And you cannot get away from that beauty. And most of us would not allow ourselves to see that moment of beauty, that fraction of a second. And he said, and I learned from him actually, that if we don't allow ourselves to see that beauty, we don't stand back up. We don't eat, we don't move around. And so to us, it's so, and it is almost like, a discipline, an obligation to always see beauty. Otherwise, it is just too difficult. Life is too, unbearable.
But do you have, this seems like a certain event in your life at the refugee camp, after which you started to learn or practice appreciating beauty. And do you have, can you recall an experience, maybe a more recent one, or how do you practice beauty, to see beauty in your daily life?
Yes, I can tell you a funny story, but before that, I would just tell you why I practice beauty, basically. Is that, there's a very famous picture of the Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures, but there's one picture that really stayed in the imagination of everybody, was that a little girl running on that road. You know what it is? She is almost like, symmetrical. And her body, she was so skinny, and the picture was not clear, so you cannot even tell if it's a boy or a girl. And she was just running in the midst of that. And before we understand that it was in a war zone, you only see a beautiful picture. And I think that's why that picture stayed with us, and not all the other ones, right? So beauty has that kind of power to touch us from the guts. I think, not all of us have the chance to see or live horror up close and personal, right? But beauty, we have all lived beauty at least once. We've seen the blue sky once. We've tasted something sweet. We have been touched by someone. And so when we start with beauty, I think we can connect from the guts. We understand each other right away. And then after that, the horror will be felt, not understood from here, but felt. If I tell you a horrible story, you will understand it from the head, and so we're still at arm's length. But if we talk about beauty, we are linked to me. And more recently, I would say during the Syrian crisis, you remember there were so many pictures. But the picture that changed the way we saw the crisis was the little boy in a red T-shirt. You remember on the by the side of a river, I think, or a beach.
In Turkey, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you remember that picture, and that it became the picture that represented the crisis, and everybody wanted to help the family of this little boy, because I think the picture by and in itself was beautiful, and so it caught our eyes, and we fell into that beauty, and then we explore, and we wanted to know who was that little boy, why he was there, and who were his parents, and so on and so forth. And, the next day, you remember there was a bigger frame of the picture, and you see lifeguards, you see life vests, you see all kinds of things around that boy, and nobody remembers that picture. Because it was no longer a beautiful picture. And that's why I allow myself to use beauty as a vehicle, to talk about difficult things, because we first, understand each other at the level of beauty. And you want me to tell how I practice beauty in our daily lives? Okay.
Please.
My partner who ran to help me with an object that we will share with you, because I forgot at the hotel room. It's a new love. It's been only 3 years. So I consider that it's still very new. And the first time that I saw, his socks not being pulled away, like in a ball. When he took them off, he left them in a ball. And and so you know what I'm talking about, right? So I look at the socks and I said, could this become a problem, in our couple? Would this affect me at one point or the other to put my hand in there and pull the sock out for the laundry? And so I look at the socks and said, okay, why? I said, he's 60 years old. So he had met so many women and mother and aunts and sisters, and all of them must have told him, like, your socks, you have to pull your socks. And he had been, scolded so many times. And even at 60, he continues to have those balls. So I said, this man is a rebel. He's the strongest man I've ever met. So I said, I'm so proud of him that he is this strong man. So now every time I see a sock and a ball, I go like, oh, he's so strong and he's rebellious, And when do we get to be rebellious? And you think that I'm just saying this to make myself feel better, but actually I do smile. Really, in my heart, there's like a little smile about the rebellious, character that he has to say, no women will make me pull my sock straight. So and this is just a funny story, but I would tell you that I do apply that kind of discipline in everything. And the whole weekend I spent with the students at the university, it was only about that. I try to give them the power of interpretation so that we can see beauty, so that we can fight back, we can be resistant.
Thank you for sharing these examples.
Now you see the socks differently.
Exactly. I would like to come back to what you just said regarding the emotional level, that when we appreciate beauty, we can meet on an emotional level. And I read that in Vietnamese, your native language, you usually don't verbalize emotions. You only formulate them in written form, right?
Yes.
So that's something you learned later when you started to learn French, when you started to live in Canada. So I wonder, how did this shift in these two languages influence your way in appreciating beauty, because it's so much connected with emotions, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to write in Vietnamese because of that. Because I left Vietnam when I was 10. I was going to say I was this small, but no, I was of the same height. I didn't grow. I haven't grown exactly the same size. And so my vocabulary stopped at the age of 10 in Vietnamese. Even though I continue to speak Vietnamese, but I haven't studied. And because we don't verbalize our emotions, so I don't get to learn the emotions verbally, right? And also, I must say that when you're born in a zone of conflict, I was born in 1968, so in the middle of the war, when the Americans were there, between 54 and 75, and so when you're in a zone of conflict, you cannot allow yourself to feel too much. If you feel too much, you cannot survive, right? You cannot be scared every time that you see a gun, because there's a gun at every corner, right? And after that, we lived with the communists from 1975 to 78. And in our home, there were 10 soldiers who lived with us. And so we were not allowed to say anything in the house because we were under surveillance, and also because every child, every person, not child only, but everybody, we had to denounce any act which was considered anti-revolutionary, anti-cultural, or anti-patriotic, and that is seeing someone reading a book, hearing someone listening to the radio, because that was no longer allowed. And so in the house, as much as possible, we don't speak, so that we don't let the people around us carry the weight of information. If I know something, then in class, when I stand up, I have to lie. I have to lie that I had not seen my parents, read a book, for example. So if you don't speak, then you cannot have any emotions. You cannot share emotions, right? So everything had to be neutral. Mm-hmm. And in the camp, in the refugee camp, you also need to quiet down all sensations and emotions. If not, you cannot survive. You know, we slept next to the pit, the open pit, which was used as a toilet for 2,000 people, right? And when I say next to it, it's like first row and here. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, you smell all this, right? But you can, your brain, it's not conscious, it's really automatic. Your brain would stop your nose to smell this. Mm-hmm. So we slept next to that hole for the whole time, for more than 4 months in Malaysia. And so you don't have any more sensations or any emotions. Mm-hmm. And so it would be impossible for me to write in Vietnamese because of that silence of sensations and emotions. Mm-hmm. So everything had to be learned in French. Mm-hmm. And then from the French, I go back into, the Vietnamese language. It's very funny, but in order for me to understand my past, I had to go through the French language. And so it's all a little bit, confusing and mixed up. And so I would tell you that every emotion, most of the emotions I've learned in Quebec. And as soon as I arrived there, people were so nice to us, and they are always asking us questions. How do you feel? Are you cold? Do you prefer bananas or apples? Do you like a red, or do you want us to give you, crayons in yellow or blue? They always ask questions, so many questions, always, and do you like this? Do you do not like this? And so I've learned a lot, but only positive emotions. Everybody's so nice, so I'm all happy all the time. So now I'm still learning some negative emotions. I don't have any, so I'm learning. I try to be mad, and I'm not very credible when I try to be mad. My children don't believe me at all when I say, yes, I'm very mad, and it doesn't work. So when I'm mad, I'm just silent. It goes into this, I just lower my eyes. That's it. But I don't know how to say it. And we just had an argument, not an argument, but a discussion about this, because he said something, I just went, that's it. I don't know how to go into the negative emotions, I would say.
But that means you first didn't have a language for the beauty, to formulate the beauty or positive emotions, and now you don't have a language for negativity.
Exactly. And the beauty, it's... I don't think that my father, he was a philosopher actually, he taught philosophy. I don't think that he consciously tried to be positive. Mm-hmm. But it was the only way to survive in that kind of, circumstances. And so if you go, for those who've been to Vietnam, very often people would say, oh, the Vietnamese are so happy, always laughing, always smiling. How can they do that, After 20 years of war, with the communist, chaotic era, and then before that, 100 years of colonization with the French, how come you can be so, happy and laughing and eating all the time? And I will tell you that we don't have a choice. If you don't smile, you die. And maybe that's why. I don't know if don't quote me on this. All the Vietnamese would say, no, we disagree with her. Yeah.
I think this might be a good moment, Kim, to practice beauty with the audience, since you have prepared an exercise.
Yes. So
I will let you introduce the exercise. I won't say much in advance.
Yeah. So with the class, I wanted to break down a little bit their notion of beauty. So I brought 8 objects, and I let them rank, the order of beauty for each object, and then afterwards I told them the story of the object, and I asked them to rank again the objects, and we have the result, and it's very interesting because everything changed, right, because of the story. So I was gonna ask you to rank to give a mark for this bracelet, which is, maybe I can pass this around. I should not tell the story because for the people in the back, they cannot, but I can describe to you. It's really, it's made from, the, how do you call that? The dentier, dentures, yes, dentures, les dentiers. The pink part that we use for the gums, yeah. So this bracelet is made by that pink gum. Yeah, that's it. And then the marks you see is that my father tried to melt it with fire, and then he tried to cut it, and he didn't succeed. And so that's the bracelet. So I can tell the story. Yeah,
I think so, because it will take too much time.
So the story is that when we left Vietnam, we fled Vietnam because we didn't have the right to leave the country, and luckily the country is surrounded with water, so we could leave by boat, and that's why the Vietnamese refugees were called boat people. The first time that expression had been created, it was for the Vietnamese, and because when we cross the sea, and to give you an idea, our boat was about 10 meters long, and we were 218 people on the boat. And so, of course, we couldn't carry any luggage, no carry-ons. I had 3 layers of clothes on me, 3 pair of pants, 3 pair of shirts, same thing with my brothers. And the only thing that we could carry with us in terms of goods were diamonds, American dollars, $100 bill, and sheets of gold. They were about 3 meters large and maybe 5 or 6 centimeters long, and it's very thin. It's basically thin like a dollar bill, but in gold, but smaller. And so when the Vietnamese economy collapsed, the communists came in. The Vietnamese dong, the money, didn't have any value anymore. So we had to basically trade in gold or diamonds. So the gold price in Vietnam at that moment in time was higher than the international than on the international market, because there was not enough. And same thing with the American $100 bills. You had to pay 120 or 130 to buy one $100 bill. And so we had to bring them, but also to hide them, because at sea there were many pirates from the neighborhood countries, and the pirates, yes, well, they learned with time where to find our hidings. But each of us try to be very, as inventive and creative as possible. Of course, the easiest way is to roll the $100 bills and swallow them, and they come out perfect. I just want to tell you that the American dollars, even 45 years ago, they went through the the system, no problem. And same thing with diamonds. Of course, you can swallow them and have them the other, at the other end. One man on our boat, he he dug a hole in his molar tooth, and then he put the diamond inside and covered it again. For the little children, we roll the $100 bills and we put in the anus directly because they cannot swallow. For the gold sheets, the flip flops like the sandals, we use a very hot and not hot, but a very sharp knife. We cut it and we put the sheets inside and we close it with a hot metal. And so that's how, people hide stuff from all kinds of, many ways. For women, what we did was also to use the pads. How do you say that? Yeah? But back then, we didn't have very good pads, so they were very thick. So it was just, cotton pressed together. So we cut in the middle and we put dollar bills inside and we put blood on it. Because, of course, for pirates, in order to impose their authority very quickly, they were maybe 5-7 pirates arrive at, coming onto a boat of 50, 100, 200 Vietnamese, how to impose their authority quickly. Of course, the greatest weapon is raping, right? Is to rape the women. And so the women would wear those pads with a lot of blood, sometimes to scare the pirates away. But they learn very quickly, and they continue. And so this bracelet that you have, my mother, her idea was to hide the diamonds inside. So inside that bracelet, you have 13 diamonds. So they were at my wrist, and so that bracelet basically traveled through the high sea. We were at sea for 4 days, and it survived the refugee camp, and it arrived in Canada. And I'm very proud to say that Canada has welcomed us in such a way that we didn't have to melt the bracelets in order to survive. We didn't have to use those diamonds to survive. And my father, during COVID, he had a lot of time, so he wanted to show my son that there were really diamonds inside. So he tried to burn it and he tried to saw it off. And luckily, I realized that he was trying to break it up. So we stopped the operation because I think that we should not open it up. The diamonds have a meaning today because they're kept together in that bracelet. If we break them up, then we lose basically the story or the history of that bracelet and of the boat people, the Vietnamese boat people. There's no history books which will talk about the Vietnamese boat people because in Vietnam we don't exist. It's a group of people a period that is not recognized yet. And outside of Vietnam, yes, the Vietnamese are scattered everywhere in the world, I think, but not one country would consider that it's a group important enough to have it in a history book, a Canadian history book. There's no reason why there would be a page about the Vietnamese boat people. And so I hope that this bracelet will find itself in some museum so that the story remains alive. Basically.
That teaches us that actually beauty is very much connected with the story behind an object, right?
Exactly. So the bracelet was not ranked very high the first time by the students, but after the story, it did. It's quite. It's the first. It's number one on many of the rankings. Yeah, so that was the exercise I did with the students of Charlotte Messner, who invited me for an amazing experience with the students.
Well, we hope you all had this experience as well.
Yeah. So you can see that it's pure plastic. So no pirates would be interested in such a bracelet. So I think my mom was quite skillful, very creative.
So this bracelet leads us actually to your novel Ru, because the narrator there wears also a bracelet like this with diamonds while she's fleeing from Vietnam. And Ru is actually mirrors very much your refugee experience with your family, and many things you shared with us, we can discover them as well in the novel. So the novel is written in unnumbered vignettes in which the narrator tells us her memories in 3 different settings, basically. So one is her childhood in Vietnam, the other one is the refugee camp in Malaysia, and the third one is arriving in Canada and starting a new life there. And before we discuss this novel in the context also of the festival, Wealth versus Poverty, we will now hear first an extract in German, read by Claudia Jahn. And the novel is called in German Klang der Fremde and is translated from French by Andrea Alvermann and Brigitte Große. Please, Claudia Jahn.
Meine erste Lehrerin in Kanada begleitete uns, die 7 jüngsten Vietnamesen der Gruppe, über die Brücke, die uns in unsere Gegenwart führte. Mit dem Zartgefühl einer Mutter für ihr Frühchen wachte sie über unsere Verpflanzung. Wir waren hypnotisiert vom langsamen, beruhigenden Schaukeln ihrer runden Hüften und ihres ausladenden Hinterns. Wie eine Entenmama watschelte sie vor uns her und lotste uns in den Hafen, in dem wir wieder Kinder werden sollten. Nichts als Kinder, umgeben von Farben, Bildern, Nichtigkeiten. Als sie sich über mich beugte, ihre Hände auf meine legte und sagte, ich heiße Marie-France, und du? Wiederholte ich jede einzelne Silbe, ohne mit der Wimper zu zucken, ohne zu verstehen oder verstehen zu wollen, umhüllt von einer Wolke aus Frische und Leichtigkeit und zartem Duft. Von den Worten hatte ich nichts verstanden, außer der Melodie ihrer Stimme, doch das genügte. Vollauf. Zu Hause wiederholte ich die Lautfolge vor meinen Eltern. Ich heiße Marie-France, und du? Sie fragten mich, ob ich meinen Namen geändert habe. In diesem Augenblick wurde ich von meiner Wirklichkeit eingeholt, in der Taub und Stummheit vorübergehend die Träume auslöschten und damit die Fähigkeit, weit, weit vorauszuschauen. Meine Eltern, die schon Französisch sprachen, konnten aber auch nicht weiter vorausschauen, weil man sie aus dem Französisch-Grundkurs geworfen und damit von der Liste derer gestrichen hatte, die ein Gehalt von $40 pro Woche bezogen. Für den Kurs waren sie überqualifiziert, für alles andere unterqualifiziert. Da sie also nichts vor sich sahen, schauten sie auf uns voraus. Für uns, ihre Kinder. Als ich am Flughafen von Mirabel durch das Bullauge des Flugzeugs die ersten Schneebänke sah, fühlte ich mich entblößt, ja nackt. Ich war nackt, trotz des kurzärmeligen orangefarbenen Pullis, den wir vor unserer Abreise nach Kanada im Flüchtlingslager von Malaysia erstanden hatten und des von Vietnamesinnen grobmaschig gestrickten braunen Wollpullovers. Mehrere von uns drängten in diesem Flugzeug fassungslos und mit offenem Mund an die Fenster. Nach unserem langen Aufenthalt an lichtlosen Orten musste eine so weiße, so jungfräuliche Landschaft uns ja erstaunen, blenden, berauschen. Ich war betäubt von all den fremden Lauten, die uns empfingen, und von der riesigen Eisskulptur, die über einen Tisch voller Sandwiches, Vorspeisen, Häppchen wachte. Ich kannte kein einziges dieser Gerichte, von denen eins farbenprächtiger war als das andere, aber ich wusste, dass dies ein Ort der Freuden, ein Traumland war. Für uns übersahen sie die schwarzen Tafeln, die sie wischten, die Schultoiletten, die sie putzten, die Frühlingsrollen, die sie auslieferten. Sie sahen nur unsere Zukunft. So gingen meine Brüder und ich in den Bahnen ihrer Blicke, um voranzukommen. Meine Mutter trug ihre ersten Kämpfe spät aus und ohne Trauer. Mit 34 arbeitete sie zum ersten Mal. Als Putzfrau zunächst, dann als Arbeiterin in Fabriken und Restaurants. Davor, in dem Leben, das sie verloren hatte, war sie die älteste Tochter ihres Präfektenvaters. Da hatte sie nichts anderes zu tun, als im Hof der Familie Streitigkeiten zwischen dem französischen und dem vietnamesischen Küchenchef zu schlichten. Oder über die heimlichen Liebschaften zwischen Dienerinnen und Dienern zu befinden. Ansonsten verbrachte sie ihre Nachmittage damit, sich zu kämmen, zu schminken, anzukleiden, um meinen Vater auf mondäne Abendveranstaltungen zu begleiten. Sie führte ein so extravagantes Leben, dass sie sich alle Träume erlauben konnte, besonders solche, die uns bestrafen. Sie bereitete meine Brüder und mich darauf vor, Musiker, Wissenschaftler, Politiker, Sportler und Künstler zu werden und gleichzeitig viele Sprachen zu sprechen. Doch da weiterhin Blut floss und in der Ferne Bomben fielen, brachte sie uns auch bei, zu knien wie Dienstboten. Tag aus, Tag ein musste ich 4 Bodenfliesen putzen und 20 Bohnenkeime verlesen, indem ich ihnen einzeln die Wurzeln ausriss. Sie bereitete uns auf den Absturz vor. Und sie hatte ganz recht, denn sehr bald hatten wir keinen Boden mehr unter den Füßen. Die ersten Nächte als Flüchtlinge in Malaysia schliefen wir auf nackter, roter Erde. Das Rote Kreuz hatte in den Nachbarländern Vietnams Flüchtlingslager für Boat People eingerichtet, die die lange Schiffsreise überlebt hatten. Die anderen, die während der Überfahrt untergegangen waren, hatten keinen Namen. Sie starben anonym. Wir gehörten zu denen, die das Glück hatten, am Festland zu stranden. Wir empfanden es als Segen, unter den 2000 Flüchtlingen des Lagers zu sein, das nur für 200 gedacht war. Meine Eltern erinnern meine Brüder und mich oft daran, dass sie kein Geld haben, das sie uns vererben könnten. Aber ich glaube, sie haben uns bereits den ganzen Schatz ihrer Erinnerungen hinterlassen, durch den wir die Schönheit einer Glyciniendolde, die Zartheit eines Wortes, die Kraft des Erstaunens begreifen können. Mehr noch, sie haben uns Füße geschenkt, mit denen wir bis zu unseren Träumen, bis ins Unendliche laufen können. Vielleicht genügt das als Ausstattung, um unseren Weg allein fortzusetzen. Sonst würde unsere Reise nur unnötig erschwert von Dingen, die wir mit uns tragen, sichern, pflegen müssten. Ein vietnamesisches Sprichwort sagt, Angst hat nur, wer lange Haare hat. Denn wenn man keine hat, kann keiner dran ziehen. Also versuche ich, so gut es geht, nur Dinge zu erwerben, die nicht über die Grenzen meines Körpers hinausgehen. Viele Immigranten haben den amerikanischen Traum verwirklicht. Vor 30 Jahren konnten wir, egal in welcher Stadt, ob in Washington D.C., Quebec, Boston, Rimouski oder Toronto, durch ganze Viertel mit Rosengärten, 100-jährigen Bäumen, Steinhäusern laufen. Doch die gesuchte Adresse stand nie an einer Tür. Heute leben meine Tante Sex und ihr Mann in einem dieser Häuser. Sie reisen erster Klasse und müssen einen Zettel an ihre Sitzlehnen heften, damit die Stewardessen aufhören, ihnen Schokolade und Champagner anzubieten. Vor 30 Jahren kroch dieser Schwiegeronkel Sex langsamer als seine 8 Monate alte Tochter durch unser Flüchtlingslager in Malaysia, weil er an Unterernährung litt. Und Tante Sex musste mit einer einzigen Nadel Kleider nähen, um Milch für ihre Tochter kaufen zu können. Vor 30 Jahren lebten wir mit ihnen im Dunkeln, ohne Strom, ohne fließendes Wasser, ohne Privatsphäre. Heute beklagen wir uns darüber, dass ihr Haus zu groß ist und unsere weit verstreute Familie zu klein, um so intensiv bis in den frühen Morgen zu feiern, wie in unseren ersten Jahren, wenn wir uns bei meinen Eltern in Nordamerika trafen.
I must say, you know, I didn't know, well, I don't know German.
Yes.
So I hear you say sex, and I said, oh, I could write about, you know, I thought I was so, wow. I wrote about sex, but then Uncle Sex.
Exactly.
And I said, oh, he would be so happy to be called Uncle Sex, you know, because he's a statistician. And not sexy at all. And so now I will tell him in German, you are sexy.
Thank you, Claudia Jan, for
Thank
the
you so
reading.
much.
Yeah, we heard many things, but what is very striking in the passages we heard is that your family and the narrator's family as well, is gone through many social class shifts, so to say. Maybe let's start with the fact that actually your family and the narrator's family was very wealthy before leaving Vietnam, and then extremely poor on a material level.
Yes.
So how was it for your family and you to deal with such poverty, since you had a totally different background?
You know, if we had left Vietnam directly from that wealthy, you know, that very comfortable home, directly to Montreal, we would have been I think we would have been very unhappy, because we say, oh, we don't have any more mates, we don't have drivers, you know, you would feel, you know, you would miss all of this. But because we had the communists who came in, took away everything, So we had practice, how to live with nothing, but with fear as well. And then we arrived in Malaysia by boat, and the boat. As soon as we arrived, we got out of the boat, and 15 minutes later, a rain came down, a very normal rain. But then the waves were stronger, and so it broke the boat right in front of our eyes. So in 15 minutes, the boat disappeared in the sea. Everything just broke, And so we were still on that beach, looking at the boat disappearing, and said, if we had, not waited, but if it took us 15 minutes more to find land, I wouldn't be here with you, right? So everything after that was a bonus, was a gift, to live. So you no longer compare. You cannot compare, So we arrived in Canada, and all of a sudden, we live in a home with water, with electricity, whereas in the camp, there was no electricity and no water. So everything was just so incredible, when you compare with the camp. And you no longer compare with a home. So if we compare directly, I think it would have been very difficult. And I just want to tell you how funny it was. We arrived in Canada. People were so nice to us. They invite us to everywhere. They took us everywhere. And one of the favorite sports in Canada is camping, right? And so people, as soon as the summer started, they came, knocked on the door, and said to my parents, "We want to take your kids to camping." And yes, my parents understood French already and English before they arrived there, but they didn't know what camping was. But because we trust these people so much, they said, "Sure, of course." And they just let the kids follow these, people we didn't know. And so we went to camping with them. We came back, and my parents asked us, so what was camping, And we said, it's like the refugee camp, We went back to somewhere with no water, no electricity. We had to sleep in a sleeping bag in the forest with mosquito, biting us again, and no cooking with little fire and no toilet, again, no toilet. And so we complained to my parents, and I said, "Why did you send us back to the refugee camp again? It's like a punishment." And my mom said to me right away, said, "No, the camping now is the proof that we have arrived in the greatest country in the world. Because here, people are so comfortable. They have to create situation where they are uncomfortable, They had to inflict on themselves uncomfortable things, right? And so we said, okay, we have a right in the right country. This is great, this country is crazy." And so that was the only time I have done camping. So it's been 45 years in Quebec, and I have not gone back to camping. I said, okay, I understand, but you do it. Yes, I don't want to be part of this. And so I would say that the comparison was easy because of that, we were so close to death. When we left with the boat, my father had cyanide pills, so that if we had to go through pirates or police or anything that was too difficult, then he showed us, my brothers and I, how to take the pills and die quickly. And so apparently the best way, I don't know if it's true, but he said that it was under the tongue, so that the chemical would go through the body quickly. And so at 10 years old, you learn how to die. So from there on, everything became very easy, you see. Yeah. And so we were lucky that we went through the camp before arriving. Because if you leave Paris and you arrive in Montreal, of course, you will complain about the baguette. That, it's not so good in Montreal, So we were lucky that we went through that period.
But even though it was much better back in Canada then, you were still very poor there because you had to
Extremely.
build
yeah.
up everything from scratch. And the other day when we met to prepare this conversation together, you told me that you're very thankful because your parents, they prevented you and your siblings from emotional poverty.
Yes.
Even though you were so pure and they so poor, and then they taught you all dignity.
And
So-
I would tell you that we were very lucky because when we first arrived in Quebec, we were welcomed with dignity. Right away, people look at us as if we were humans and not, refugees. We were just, and we were welcomed right away from the first second. And, the hotel where we landed, because I don't know if it works like this in Switzerland, but in Quebec, if you learn French, if you go to classes in French, then the government will give you a salary to learn French for a couple of months. Yeah, $40 a week. I remember at that time. But my parents spoke French already before arriving in Quebec, so they couldn't go to that class and have a salary. And the hotel where we were, the owner knew about that, had learned about my parents couldn't go to school. So I still remember that day, my father came into the room, asked us to come together, and he started the sentence by saying, "We are so lucky because the owner of the hotel had given him a job, and his job was to clean the safety, the emergency stairs, the staircase, but for the emergency only, as a full-time job." The problem was the hotel had only 4 floors. Right? And how do you clean the stairs for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? So my father said that, he will have to use a toothbrush, to clean the stairs because nobody uses the stair. And so we learned right away, right there, that the owner of the hotel, instead of just giving us money, he wanted to protect our dignity by giving my father a job. And also he knew that if my father had his first job, then he can become, the owner can become a reference for a second job, and then a third job, and a fourth job. And so, and then after that, the dignity, I would, one example, when we succeeded at trying to buy the first house, and I still remember it was $36,000. And the people who were selling the house, it was a young couple, and the wife just got pregnant, and he just lost his job, and that's why he had to sell the house. And we were so poor, and we paid 20% interest, interest rate in order to pay just the down payment for the house. And my father said that if he bargained down to 34,000, for sure they would accept. And for us, 2,000 was a huge amount because my mom and I, we sew at home and we made only $2 a day. We were so bad, we were not good at this. And my father was still delivering pizza. And so we didn't have money. 2,000 was enormous, but he never bargained. He said that this couple was in an extreme circumstance. They are going into poverty, right? No job, with pregnancy and all of that. So he said, we will carry the 2,000. We will share, our luck that we are still working. And I would say that probably the pride was that, when we knew that we couldn't go to that class to have a salary, the government tell us right away that, but the government can give you welfare, the check for social assistance. And my parents said, no, we're going to find work. We don't want the social assistance. We are already very thankful that you have us here, so we want to work. And I think so from the beginning, they have always protected us or protected our dignity in a way to fight against, how would I say it? to preserve dignity at every single step of the way. And so I'm very thankful that they had never, transfers the vulnerability that they had to go through. So I personally never felt that I was poor, even though we were dirt poor. But there was no, they never transmitted the shame of us going to buy, the fruits which were on sale in the back store, like it's too ripe or about to be thrown away. So it was only, $1 for the whole bag of bananas or something like that. But somehow they never, made it like it was something shameful to do, but to look at it more like we were very débrouillard, how do you say that? We found our way. So we invented recipes, from the vegetables that we could find. And it was something very positive to be creative and to be able to cook with whatever we could find. So I'm very thankful to them for that. Yeah.
But having that background, how do you relate to material wealth today?
Oh, because I've learned how to live with very little money. So today I'm not scared at all. If not, you don't choose to write, to be a writer in Montreal. I don't know how it is here, but in Quebec.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. We get 10% from and a bestseller in Quebec is about 3,000 copies. So it's about 6,000 per year. For many years, because you have to count the year that you write, the year that you publish, the year you sell, and then that's it. So if you're lucky, you make about 6,000 for 3 years or for 5 years. So I don't think that's something you would choose to do. But in my case, probably because I know I can survive on very little. I know how to breathe with just this. And never breathe, the whole lungs. And I'm still learning. I have a friend who said, okay, you have to go deep, meditation. And I don't know how to do that yet, but so I breathe only from here. So I don't need a lot of air. I know I don't need a lot of air. And I know I don't need a lot of water. I know I don't need a lot of, and I can make fire very quickly with not much. With what? And so I am no longer, I'm not scared of not having much, not owning much, as long as I can work. And I'm lucky to live in a country which I know will never let me die. Actually, you have to ask and beg to die, It's very difficult to die in Canada. They always try to make you live. So it's quite difficult to die. And so, I'm very lucky to land in a country that which will do everything to make you live. Yeah.
There is another aspect regarding the material wealth if we connect it with beauty. We also spoke about this the other day when we had a discussion about how differently approached people beauty depending on their social class. So
absolutely,
you have experienced that when you had a restaurant, actually.
Yes.
Maybe you want to share this story.
Absolutely,
with the audience?
I had the opportunity to be a lawyer just before opening up a restaurant, and it was in a big law firm with a big salary and all of that. And then, I had kids, and I just went, the hormones make you go crazy, so you open a restaurant. And and so I opened a restaurant thinking that I would be able to cook, to have a chef. I couldn't, and I ended up being a chef. And so I could offer only one meal a day. But, and people thought that it was a new concept, that you cannot order. You just go in and there's one meal a day. That's it. And it became a community. But before all of that, I went back in the neighborhood where I was, which was a very poor area, a poor neighborhood, and I wanted to open up a beautiful restaurant to offer to that community, that neighborhood. And so we spent a lot of money for, renovation. And my uncle is an architect, and he also felt that, let's give back, And so he spent many months, working with me, making this, very, beautiful restaurant. And we got to be on different magazines because it was so beautiful. And I said, yes, in this neighborhood, people should be allowed to have access to beauty as well. So the price of the meal was very low, even though the restaurant was very beautiful. And to my greatest surprise, nobody from that neighborhood came into the restaurant. Even though next to us, there was a hamburger place, and the hamburger, was more expensive than what I was offering. And people still didn't come in. My customers were from the companies, people who came there only for work, the IT people, media, TV, and all of that in those cool lofts. But the real people from that community refused to come in. And I went to them. I went outside and asked them, why don't you come to my, I went into the hamburger restaurant and I said, please come, I'm cheaper, and they said, no, it's not for us. And they were totally intimidated by the beauty of the restaurant. It was not the price, it was not the food, it was that imaginary border, frontier that they would not cross. And we had the restaurant for 5 years, and I did not succeed, not even once, to have someone from the neighborhood to come in. And every time the answer was, this is not for us. And I was so sad, but I didn't know how to make it work. But later on, I would say that a couple of years ago, I've met they call it a médiateur culturel, so someone who will use culture as a bridge for the different neighborhoods to be together. And at first, they try to give out opera tickets or tickets for the opera house, and for free to the poorer neighborhood, and nobody came. And they sent a bus to take them, and still nobody came. And so they started asking questions, and they said, "But we don't know what the opera is, and this is not for us." And so what they did was they invited an opera singer who went into the community, sat down with them, and showed them, how she learned to sing and how opera worked, and explained to them. And then from that point on, they could bring the community into the opera house. And so I think we need that in order to reach out, we need to to go meet them at the places where they are first, instead of asking them to come in. And that's where I talked about beauty. We need to be at the same place first to have a conversation in order to come in. So at the restaurant, people would talk to me outside of the restaurant, from the community. They like me, they would help me with the leaves outside and everything, but they refused to come in because they said, the customers you have, they won't like us. And we will not feel comfortable to be sitting next to your customers. And I said, no, they're very nice, they are. But still, just the way we dress, the way we talk, the way we act, would draw that border, that divide, that division between the neighborhoods and between the different communities.
And you think to unite, it is very important to go to the people, because it's very sad. That means beauty is something non-material, but with your experience, the conclusion, it became material, actually.
and it's basically a wall. And so what happened was, I will share with you. I was invited to Brussels, to Bruxelles, and it was right after the Bataclan. You remember. And on the program, they sent me to the women's house, the Muslim women's house, or something like that, La Maison des Femmes Musulmanes. And I said, why you send me? Like, I'm just a Quebecer, and why? And Molenbeek, the house was in Molenbeek, and they just discovered that the terrorists were, living in Molenbeek. So Molenbeek in the news was seen as the incubator, of terrorism. And then you want to send me, like the Vietnamese Quebecer to Molenbeek. And I said, well, what do you want me to do there, and talk about literature? No, and I was invited by the book fair, the Salon du Livre, which was only 10 minutes away from Molenbeek. But they said they could never have these women come to the book fair. So they sent me as a diplomat or something. And I said, okay, you want me to talk about books? But then they said that these women were mostly illiterate, even in their own mother tongue, not only in French, but in their own mother tongue. So I said, you want me to talk about books to them? And I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I said, do they have a kitchen? I asked them, do they have a kitchen in that house? And they said, yes. So I said, could I cook? Could I cook with them? And we chose one ingredient that exists both in Vietnamese cuisine and their cuisine, and it was the eggplant. So I went in and I cooked the eggplant the Vietnamese way. They cooked the eggplant in their own way, and then we shared. And it was supposed to be 1.5 hours, but then I stayed there for 5 hours. And we talked. We talked about everything, sex included, and their worries. Their worries about their children, because they said that they could not read and they cannot follow their children. And so they were so worried about their children being, pulled into the extreme, And so they asked me, so we discussed about this a lot. And then we also danced together. And I'm a very bad, I have no rhythm, so it was very funny. And so I think this is, and what happened was that the next day, they went to the book fair, not for the books. They wanted to bring me some desserts. And they found my where I was, but I was on stage, so they had to wait for me. And while they were waiting, they started walking around, and they saw books for little children, for their grandchildren. And so they bought some books for their grandchildren. And the beauty of this is that after that, they came back and presented the writing that they had done at the book fair, because they accepted to have, those writing workshops, and they presented their work at the book fair 2 years later. How incredible, right? Yeah. And so beauty, I think if we go back to, the place where we all meet, then we can have a conversation and then grow together, I think. So I have to open the restaurant again, so that I'll know how this time around, probably I will know how to make it more accessible for the neighborhood.
Conversation is a key word, because in another work of yours, you reflected on beauty together with the Swiss-Slovakian author Pascal Janovjak.
Yes.
Yeah, you two met in Monaco in a hotel, and
this sounds so sexy. That we met in the hotel in Monaco.
I think it was for literary purposes, right?
Yeah. Maybe. It was for the award.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then after that, you two started writing each other, and I think, over the course of around 4 months.
Yes.
And then the result was the book Toi, published in 2011.
Yes.
And in this book, you reflect on many different aspects of beauty together. And we will now hear an extract from Toi. And actually, this book hasn't been translated in German yet, so we had translated an extract for the festival. And it is translated from French by Lydia Dimitrov.
Thank you, Lydia. Yes, it was a moment of grace for me to have done this project.
Kim, 10. Oktober, 9:06 Uhr. Meine Mutter sagte immer, ihr Traum sei, durchschnittliche Kinder zu haben. Nicht zu hübsch, nicht zu hässlich, nicht zu intelligent, nicht zu dumm. Sonst landeten ihre Kinder irgendwo am Rand, könnten nicht in der Masse untergehen. Leider hat sie keine besonders hübschen Kinder geboren. Sobald ich anfing, mein Spiegelbild in ihren Augen zu sehen, wurde sie nicht müde, mir zu erklären, Tochter, ich habe dir weder Schönheit noch Intelligenz mitgegeben. Anders als deine Cousins, die haben alles über die Gene bekommen. Wenn du ein Leben willst, musst du dir ein Inneres aufbauen, von innen heraus. An deiner körperlichen Hülle kannst du nichts ändern. An deiner Persönlichkeit vielleicht schon. Das Ziel dieser Mühe war, mich dem Trung-Dung anzunähern, dem Durchschnitt, dem Gleichgewicht. Als ich Kind war, suchte ich überall nach diesem Inneren. In den Fersen, im Magen, unter dem Kinn, auf der Zunge, hinter den Ohren, überall, aber umsonst. Die Jungfräulichkeit erscheint manchmal wie eine Leere ohne Widerhall. Nachdem ich über Jahre hinweg nichts fand, kam ich auf den brillanten Gedanken, diese Leere mit der Seele anderer zu füllen. So fing ich an, die Überlegung des einen, die Inspiration des anderen aufzusaugen. Verstreute Emotionen im Flug aufgefangen an einem Tisch, in einem Schlüsselloch, zwischen 2 Augenaufschlägen. Nach 40 Jahren besitze ich jetzt eine Sammlung an Wissen, Gefühlen, an so unterschiedlichen, so verflochtenen und so widersprüchlichen Reflexen, dass das Ganze für die Illusion einer Seele reicht. Oder zumindest eines gewissen Gleichgewichts, wenn nicht Durchschnitts. Vielleicht liebe ich deswegen den Frühling und den Herbst, 2 Übergangsjahreszeiten, weder zu warm noch zu kalt, einfach durchschnittlich.
I hope it was good. I have no idea. I don't remember what I've written.
Pascal, 10. Oktober, 16:53 Uhr. Das gehört zu den Dingen, die mir hier am meisten fehlen, mir auch in Asien gefehlt haben. Die Milde der Übergangszeit, die Farben des Herbsts. Manchmal fehlt mir auch ein Hafen, vor allem jetzt, da wir das Kind erwarten. Ich denke an die Menschen, die in Europa leben, in ihrer Heimatstadt. Sie haben eine Arbeit, die Familie in der Nähe, eine Wohnung, eine Krankenversicherung. Und plötzlich erscheint mir mein Leben so unsicher. Ein Leben den Stürmen ausgeliefert, unter rauem Himmel. Und so träume ich von einem Anker, einem ruhigen Golfstrom, etwas Lauem, etwas Unbeweglichem. In diesen Momenten raunt die Angst. Kim, 10. Oktober, 12:25 Uhr. Als ich auf dem Weg von Monaco nach Nizza im Auto saß, ließen die vorbeiziehenden Bilder, die hinter der Scheibe verschwanden, meine Erinnerungen so brüchig werden. Die Unterhaltungen auf dem Balkon von Jeans Zimmer, das Geräusch von Francines langsamen und unsicheren Schritten auf dem Pflaster, deinen unergründlichen Blick in der untergehenden Sonne vor dem Meer auf der Terrasse des Saals im Ermitage, als wir auf die Prinzessin warteten. Alles schien mir zu entgleiten, wie der Rauch eurer Zigaretten. Mir entgleitet ständig alles. Häufig, wenn ich spät nachts nach Hause komme, während meine Kinder träumen, setze ich mich für eine ganze Weile ins Wohnzimmer und versuche, mir klarzumachen, dass dieser Ort mein Zuhause, mein Ankerpunkt, meine Adresse auf Erden ist. Ich wohne in einem wunderschönen alten Haus, luxuriös und komfortabel eingerichtet mit den Kolonialmöbeln aus Vietnam, die mein Mann sorgfältig zusammengetragen und hierher gebracht hat. Dazu die Bilder von zeitgenössischen Künstlern aus aller Welt. Die Farben an den Wänden erinnern mich an die Angst, die ich angesichts der überwältigenden, kaum greifbaren Schönheit einer Frau im safranfarbenen Sari empfand. In den Öffnungen eines langen Gangs, der die Grenze zwischen mir und der Wüste markierte, verschwand sie und tauchte sie auf. Das war auf einer Reise durch Indien vor etwa 10 Jahren. Ich frage mich oft, mit welchem Recht ich in den Genuss all dieser Schönheit komme. Habe ich doch noch nicht genug gelebt, genug gegeben, genug geliebt? Vielleicht gehört das Leben, das ich lebe, gar nicht mir. Also wache ich auf, gehe meinen Weg, liebe ich mit der Unsicherheit einer Hochstaplerin. Obwohl ich eine Lebensversicherung habe, eine Krankenversicherung, eine Sozialversicherung. Jean Genet hat recht, wenn er schreibt, dass ein Dieb keine Angst hat, weil er stiehlt, sondern weil er gestohlen hat. Ich lebe in dieser Angst eines Ganoven und nicht in der des zukünftigen Familienvaters auf der Suche nach einem Hafen. Aber doch ist diese Unsicherheit untergründig und gleichzeitig allgegenwärtig vielleicht dieselbe. Pascal, 10. Oktober, 22:22 Uhr. Es gibt Volksstämme ohne Musik, singt Brel. Und ich kenne Menschen, die sähen in einem Gauguin nichts als hübsche, exotische Figuren. Und andere einen Preis in $. Bei dem Abendessen im Hotel Ermitage saß ich neben einer Frau, die mich zum Weinen gebracht hat. Sie war die dritte, die mir empfahl, mir in der Altstadt die Wachablösung anzusehen. Und ich dachte mir, es kann nicht viel Interessantes in Monaco geben, wenn man mir ständig diese Zeremonie empfahl. Zumal ich wirklich nicht viel für Paraden und Uniformen übrig habe. Sie dagegen sah darin etwas Schönes. Sie liebte das Militär. Übrigens vertraute sie mir an, wäre sie ein Mann, wäre sie Soldat geworden. Ich tauschte ein Lächeln mit dem Autor neben mir, ein Lächeln, das noch breiter wurde, als sie uns erklärte, dass sie mit einer ganzen Reihe Offizieren befreundet sei und dass Obersten und Generäle sie sehr schätzten. Ich weiß nicht mehr, worüber sie dann sprach, ob von Yachten oder von Autos. Dann fing sie an, über Kunst zu reden. Und wir bissen uns schon auf die Lippen. Es gab eine Damien Hirst-Ausstellung in Monaco. Nicht so interessant wie die Wachablösung, aber trotzdem ein absolutes Muss. Als ich das erste Mal da war, sagte sie, mochte ich das gar nicht. Aber dann habe ich in der Zeitung gelesen, dass Damien Hirst Platz 2 der Weltrangliste belegt. Also bin ich nochmal hingegangen und dann hat es mir außerordentlich gut gefallen. Wirklich fantastisch. In dem Moment habe ich dann geweint. Es war einfach zu viel. Selbst in dem sanften Licht der Kronleuchter mit dem Klirren des Bestecks, mich überkam ein so schrecklicher Lachkrampf. Ich heulte wie ein Schlosshund. Ich weiß nicht mehr, wie ich mich aus der Affäre gezogen habe. Ich glaube, sie hat nichts gemerkt und sie hat nicht gemerkt, dass es um sie ging. Übrigens nehme ich mir mein ungehemmtes Gelächter übel. Zumindest war die Frau durch und durch offen. Das muss man ihr lassen. Aber was ich dir eigentlich sagen wollte, du glaubst, dir die Schönheit um dich herum zu erschleichen. Aber ob es einem uniformen Gauguin, Damien Hirst oder der einfache Anblick einer Inderin im Sari angetan hat, man bekommt immer nur die Schönheit, die man verdient. Und die liegt in dem Blick, mit dem man die Dinge betrachtet. Kim, 11. Oktober, 5:59 Uhr. Neulich haben wir uns die Walhaie in Mexiko angesehen. Sie kommen jedes Jahr im Juni, Juli, August in diesen Winkel der Erde, weil es dort Krill im Überfluss gibt. Auf offener See durchquerten wir jedes Blau des Meeres. Kristallblau, Tiefblau, Persischblau, Türkisblau, Himmelblau, Aquablau, Elektroblau, Saphirblau, Französischblau, Horizontblau, Ultramarinblau. 40 Minuten lang versuchten meine Augen, sich daran zu gewöhnen, um von der Weite und ihren unermesslichen Schichten aus Blau nicht erschlagen zu werden. Ich dachte, meine Filzstiftesammlung könnte auch nur die Nuancen dieser Farbe enthalten. Mein ganzes Leben könnte sich auf diese traumhafte Palette an Schattierungen beschränken. Auf dem Weg zu unserem Ziel wurden wir von Delfinen aufgehalten, die unserem Boot folgten. Und wie sie uns mit ihrem Tanz umgarnten, konnte uns nur verzücken. Als wir auf unserer Flucht aus Vietnam den Golf von Thailand überquert hatten, hatten uns auch eine Zeit lang Delfine begleitet. Als wollten sie uns daran erinnern, dass es Leben im Meer gab und dass Letzteres den Schiffbrüchigen auch einen sanften und friedlichen Tod schenken konnte. Ich blickte zu diesem endlosen Horizont und dankte leise dem Himmel dafür, dass ich zum Zeitpunkt unserer Flucht erst 10 war und nicht 34 oder 41 wie meine Eltern, die sich in vollem Bewusstsein, aber ohne Erfahrung dafür entscheiden mussten, sich den Wellen und dem Wind anzuvertrauen. Und auf symbolische Weise schloss ich mit 41 Jahren die Augen und sprang in die Tiefe dieses so geheimnisvollen, so unheimlichen, so unberührten Blaus, um dort auf die größten Fische der Erde zu treffen. Erwartungsgemäß beeindruckten sie durch ihre Größe, aber gleichzeitig verschmolzen sie wie Einsiedler mit der Ruhe und der Stille des Wassers. Also beschloss ich, dem Guide nicht zu folgen, als der mich einlud, Seite an Seite mit ihnen zu schwimmen. Es kam mir nicht richtig vor, in ihre Blase einzudringen, denn die wirkte so friedlich auf mich.
Thank you, Claudia Jan. Well, Kim, I would have had plenty of questions, but unfortunately we
No
ran
more
out.
time.
Yeah, but no, wait. I will ask one last question, and then maybe we can have
Okay.
question.
And I'll try to give a short
Yes,
answer.
please.
Okay, I know, I see it in your eyes.
No.
Okay.
So, one thing that I was thinking about when reading Autor is that there is also a vulnerability that comes with beauty, because mostly we have to let go of any beauty at some point. So the notion of beauty is very elusive, and I wonder, how do we cope with that when thinking of the notion whether beauty can save the world?
I don't have an answer to that, and I'm not even sure that Dostoevsky really meant what he wrote. That beauty will save the world. But I think he used the word beauty for many things, for kindness, for resilience, for generosity, optimism. I think beauty englobe, how do you say that, includes all those notions, right? And I would just, share with you a quote by Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican movie director. But this is not, perfect quote, but he said something like, optimism is a choice, and it's a brave choice, a radical choice, a rebellious choice, because life is difficult, right? So how do we keep on, seeing optimism? So he said 99% of the time, life doesn't go the way that we want, but there's 1% that we can keep, and we can look at life from that 1% of optimism and enlarge that 1% to 1.5 to 2 to 10 instead of seeing life from the 99%. And that's why optimism is basically an act of a rebel, like the socks, See it from the sock side. And so this is what I think beauty means. And this is the only way for us to resist to all the ugliness, not of the world, but of us as humans, because we carry this darker side in us. And how do we fight that back? And so the two angels, right? So we need to give a lot of attention to that little angel so that he or she can compensate the darker side of us, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of darkness. And so it's every day. It's every single minute of the day that we have to fight back. So it's very, very tiring, to fight for beauty. But I think it's worth it, because it makes us, it makes life a better experience. And for us as humans to have probably, a better satisfaction as we're going through life. Yeah. So, that was a short answer.
Yes.
Thank you, Tuba.
Do you think we have maybe a few minutes for one or two questions?
If there is a question that has to be asked, now is the moment. If not, I think it was such a beautiful closing word that we all have to fight for beauty. That I would like just that we leave it like that for the moment. And thank you, Kim Thúy, Tuba Ayaz, Claudia. Thank you very much. There is so many things still going on in my head of things you said, and this beautiful reading, and the ultramarine blue of the sky also in this city that we had in front of us. I read about that. I have to say some quite basic things, like there is a book table outside, and we sell the books of Kim Thúy, and she will be signing them, and she will be around. And we will be back here at 8 o'clock with Lucas Barefus, Katja Centinetta, Katharina Latifi about the big subject of Erben, heritage. And I would also like to mention the late night in Cabaret Voltaire with Jean d'Amérique. Jean d'Amérique is the Right-in-Residence of Literaturhaus and Stiftung PWG. And he's a poet, he's a dramaturg, he's also a rapper and a singer. And we had a reading a month ago, and he said also a beautiful sentence. He said that poetry is the sound of language. La poésie, c'est le soleil du langage. And he's going to be singing and reading his poetry in Cabaret Voltaire at 10 o'clock this evening. So I hope to see you there and tomorrow maybe again. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.